The walling of awareness. During a 6-month period in 1973, the New York Times reported the following scientific findings. A major research institute spent more than $50,000 to discover that the best bait for mice is cheese. Another study found that mother's milk was better balanced nutritionally for infants than commercial formulas. That study also proved that mother's milk was better for human infants than cow's milk or goat's milk. A third study established that a walk is considerably healthier for the human respiratory and circulatory systems, in fact for overall health and vitality, than a ride in a car. Bicycling was found also to be beneficial. A fourth project demonstrated that juice of fresh oranges has more nutritional value than either canned or frozen orange juice. A fifth study proved conclusively that infants who are touched a lot frequently grow into adults with greater self-confidence and have a more integrated relationship with the world than those who are not touched. This study found that touching, not merely sexual touching, but any touching of one person by another, seemed to aid general health and even mental development among adults as well as children. The remarkable thing about these 5 studies, of course, is that anyone should have found it necessary to undertake them. That some people find them necessary can only mean that they felt there was some uncertainty about how the answers would turn out. And yet, anyone who has seen a mouse eating cheese or has been touched by the hand of another person already knows a great deal about these things, assuming he or she gives credence to personal observation. Similarly, anyone who has ever considered the question of artificial milk versus human milk is unlikely to assume that Nestle's or Similac will improve on a feeding arrangement that accounted for the growth of every human infant before modern times. That any people retain doubts on these questions is symptomatic of 2 unfortunate conditions of modern existence. Human beings no longer trust personal observation, even of the self-evident, until it is confirmed by scientific or technological institutions. Human beings have lost insight into natural processes, how the world works, the human role as one of the many interlocking parts of the worldwide ecosystem, because natural processes are now exceedingly difficult to observe. These 2 conditions combine to limit our knowledge and understanding to what we are told. They also leave us unable to judge the reliability or unreliability of the information we go by. The problem begins with the physical environment in which we live. Most Americans spend their lives within environments created by human beings. This is less the case if you live in Montana than if you live in Manhattan, but it is true to some extent all over the country. Natural environments have largely given way to human-created environments. What we see, hear, touch, taste, smell, feel, and understand about the world has been processed for us. Our experiences of the world can no longer be called direct or primary. They are secondary, mediated experiences. When we are walking in a forest, we can see and feel what the planet produces directly. Forests grow on their own without human intervention. When we see a forest or experience it in other ways, we can count on the experience being directly between us and the planet. It is not mediated, interpreted, or altered. On the other hand, when we live in cities, no experience is directly between us and the planet. Virtually all experience is mediated in some way. Concrete covers whatever would grow from the ground. Buildings block the natural vistas. The water we drink comes from a faucet, not from a stream or the sky. All foliage has been confined by human considerations and redesigned according to human tastes. There are no wild animals. There are no rocky terrains. There is no cycle of bloom and decline. There is not even night and day. No food grows anywhere. Most of us give little importance to this change in human experience of the world, if we notice it at all. We are surrounded by a reconstructed world that is difficult to grasp how astonishingly different it was from the world of only 100 years ago, and that it bears virtually no resemblance to the world which human beings lived for 4 million years before that. That this might affect the way we think, including our understanding of how our lives are connected to any non-human system, is rarely considered. In fact, most of us assume that human understanding is now more thorough than before, that we know more than we have ever did. This is because we have such faith in our rational, intellectual processes and in the institutions we have created that we fail to observe their limits. I have heard small children ask whether apples and oranges grow in stores. Of course not, we tell them. Fruit grows from the ground somewhere out in the countryside, and then it's put into trucks and brought to the stores. But is this true? Have you seen that? Do you have a sense that what you are eating was once alive, growing on its own? We learn in schools that fruit grows from the ground. We see pictures of fruit growing, but when we live in cities, confined to the walls and floors of our concrete environments, we don't actually see the slow process of blossom appearing on a tree, then becoming a bud that grows into an apple. We learn this, but we can't really know what it means or that a whole cycle is operating. Sky to ground to root through the tree to bud ripening into fruit that we can eat. Nor do we see particular value in this knowledge. It remains an idea to us, an abstraction that is difficult to integrate into our consciousness without direct experience of the process. Therefore, we don't develop a feeling about it, a caring. In the end, how can our children or we really grasp that fruit growing from the tree has anything to do with humans growing from eating the fruit? We have learned that water does not really originate in the pipes where we get it. We are educated to understand that it comes from the sky. We have seen it. It is true. Lands in some faraway mountains, flows into rivers, which flow into little reservoirs, then somehow it all goes through the pipes into the sinks in our homes and back out to where? The ocean? We learn there is something called evaporation that takes the water we don't need up to the sky. But is this true? Is there a pattern to it? How does it collect in the sky? Is it okay to rearrange the cycle with cloud seeding? Is it okay to collect the water in dams? Does anyone else need the water? Do plants drink it? How do they get it? Does water go into the ground? In cities, it rolls around on concrete and then pours into sewers. Since we are unable to observe most of the cycle, we learn about it in knowledge museums, schools, textbooks. We study to know. What we know is what we have studied. We know what the book says. What the book says is what the author of the books learned from experts who, from time to time, turn out to be wrong. Everyone knows about night and day. Half the time it's dark, half the time it's light. However, it doesn't work that way in our homes or outside in the streets. There is always light. It's always the same, controlled by an automatic switch downtown. The stars are obscured by the city glow. The moon is washed out by a filter of light. It becomes a semi-moon, and our awareness of it inevitably dims. We say it is night, but darkness, moods, and feelings lie dormant in us. Faced with real darkness, we become frightened, overreact, like a child whose parents have always left the light on. In 3 generations since Edison, we have become creatures of light alone.